Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this beautiful 16th of July. And as always, it is time for us tutorials. And I am joined by the one and only Mod Stu. Say hello, Stu.
Hello, it is a pleasure to be back with you.
There you go. I went a bit Australian there. I don't know what happened to me, but good to have you back, Stu.
It's good to be here.
Before we, I enjoy this. These are probably one of my favorite live streams. But before we dig in, we have a couple of notes and bits of information. So I believe we're going to swap screen for this as well, which is pretty cool. There we go, the fireball, and here we go. Bam! There it is. Merch. It's got released today, I think, if I'm correct, in this morning. You can get 4 key rings, Gothic, Ceradome, Zemrock, and Max Capes. So they're pretty cool. If you want those, you can pre-order them now, to my knowledge. And similarly, we have a pre-order for a Gods Exposed limited edition pin set. And this is in collaboration with The Noob Show and RuneScape's. So make sure you get those beautiful pins as well. I've still got my my Presley Golden Gnome pin as well, which I'm very proud of. There you go. And then the only other thing is Desperate Measures is getting closer and closer now. The 27th of July is coming out. So make sure you're prepared for it. Make sure you do the base camp Anachronia, or the Anachronia base camp tutorial. Make sure you get level 50 archaeology and agility. And I would also suggest you train to level 75 archaeology. Archaeology combat. Wow. Make sure you have 75 combat. I don't know what happened there. But it's going to be cool. It's going to be a great quest. And next week, on Tuesday, we will be playing through that quest together with Mod Raven, and Mod Orion should also be there, which is going to be cool. We'll start that live stream an hour early, so make sure to set your timers. And with all of that out of the way, it is time to continue with the Lumbridge Introductory Task, and I'm going to hand it over to you, Mod Stu.
Excellent, thank you. Welcome back to this tutorial series, a retrospective review of RuneScape's historic tutorials. This week we continue our journey through the Lumbridge Introductory Tasks, the 5th version of RuneScape's tutorial. These streams discuss a specific tutorial from RuneScape's past in exquisitely painful detail. We're not showing you a new tutorial or any future content. Stay or bail, your choice. Either way, LootScape is a thing. I am unable to see the chat, but my lovely assistant Mod Poerkie can. He'll gather your questions. Q&A will occasionally happen. I think you know the drill by now.
Pretty sure they know the drill by now, Stu.
In our previous episode, we tracked the transition from the Unstable Foundations primer of 2009 into the first 4 hours experience. This is a critical period after the initial onboarding, beyond the first 5 to 30 minutes we've identified so far as the tutorial. In the first 4 hours, it's essential to hook a new user and get them invested in goals and objectives, so they'll come back tomorrow and continue playing RuneScape. This was achieved through a breadcrumb trail of introductory tasks released in 2011 that proved effective in retaining new players. Instead of quitting right after the tutorial, stop telling them what to do, fresh, new, delicious blood coursed through RuneScape's veins. The tasks were like feeding pellets in a maze, focusing the player's attention and guiding them through short-term goals into longer-term goals, becoming invested in and learning how to navigate a complex world, feeling a sense of agency and avoiding the ghosts of choice paralysis, boredom, and frustration. Making the player immediately aware of accessible goals kept them playing after the tutorial. There's always at least one pellet of accomplishment just to chomp away. Unstable Foundations covered only the broadest concepts, but players were continuing to learn more about the game as they explored Lumbridge, easing gradually into the game's core loops. Tasks proved to be more effective than the objective and advisor systems, and to have a positive impact on retention. Any questions before I continue?
I'm going to put you on the spot and ask you another question first. What are the ghosts called in Pac-Man, Stu? Do you still know that?
Oh no, Pinky, Perky, Clyde is the tough one. Oh no! I put one game into my head at a time when I'm doing these tutorials. I know RuneScape right now. That's why I couldn't answer the question about tutorials the previous time, because like I only know RuneScape right now.
I appreciate that you suggest that one would be named after me, but it is Pinky, Blinky, Inky, and Clyde indeed. It's of Clive, isn't it? Clive or Clyde? I thought it was Clyde instead of Clyde.
I think it's Clyde.
I could be wrong.
Yeah.
With a D. It's Clyde. There you go. Yeah. So that's cool. There were 4 quick questions. Some of them are related to the tutorials, some not. So I'll go through the non-tutorials related first, so we can get back onto track with tutorials, and then I'll ask the question more so about tutorials. How does RuneScape work? You just have to watch, and in order to get the RuneScape, just make sure that your Twitch account and your RuneScape account is linked. And I think you can do that by exclamation mark Twitch. If not, no, I don't think that's actually the case. Look it up on the support pages, and there will be very handy instructions on how to link your Twitch and RuneScape account. There you go. That is definitely not working. Exclamation mark Twitch, so just don't do it. Then furthermore, there was a question about the smashing relics missing in certain locations. Just saw a message about that. It's something they're looking at. And I believe they'd like to make sure that is possible, so they're looking at that. Then another question, which I think is related to the achievements in general, Stu, which is I know that's something you're working on, and this was a question from Spaced Viking. You're doing a lot of achievement stuff in the back end, and historically there have been difficulties with achievements removing those if they have rune score. Am I correct? Could you give a little bit of an insight in what that is by any chance, or like how that why it is a problem for us?
Yeah. So basically, we can control the stuff that's within the realm of the game through our scripting language, and that's kind of what the content developers do. But where there are also additional modules external to the game, maintained by other teams. So there's a separate module for the high scores that's outside of the game. Basically, when we're transmitting your rune score information to it, we can only add to your rune score, or we can't take it back again. It's similar to the currency issue I've mentioned before about quest points, where once you've got quest points, we can't take them back off you. So that's basically the problem we have there, is that because we have this external module that we have to submit your rune score state to, that prevents us from being able to take it off you, because we can't remove it from that module once it's been given.
Okay, thank you for that quick explanation. And then the most important question: what if you've not seen a tutorial stream, but you like to watch it back? Where can you find it?
Well, fortunately, we have been adding them to our YouTube channel. The Unstable Foundations first episode, I believe, went on there yesterday. So basically every couple of weeks afterwards, a new episode will get added. I've seen some people in the comments there already saying that they've enjoyed the opportunity to watch these here because they couldn't necessarily watch them live. So it's been a great opportunity.
Cool. So yeah, make sure that they are being uploaded to our YouTube channel. I think we're a couple of episodes behind, but they're slowly, we're uploading one each week. So that's where you can find them. Back over to you, Stu.
Okay. So, tasks prove to be more effective than the advisor system and to have a positive impact on retention. Then someone had the idea, do we even need unstable foundations? If the player can learn how to play the game by completing tasks, they can just do that, what they want, when they want. Do we even need a linear tutorial in some gloomy cellar beneath Lumbridge that forces you to complete these tasks in a specific order? Why not just give the player the task list, teach the core mechanics in-world through introductory tasks, if and when the player wants to, and let them run wild in the sandbox? Isn't that the player freedom that's truer to the essence of RuneScape? So we gave that a shot. We tried skipping unstable foundations and introducing the core concepts in-world, in Lumbridge, solely through the introductory tasks. Here in this playthrough from July 2011, immediately after character creation, the player starts in Explorer Jack's house. No more trapped in a dank cellar in Lumbridge, no dragon, no advisor, no sudden drop in retention when the player transitions from the tutorial area to the overworld. The player starts out in the fresh air, taught the camera controls in a small room. As in Unstable Foundations, the player must prove they've learned how to rotate their camera to clear this controls pop-up. And then, using these nice clean pop-ups with big and readable text, the player is directed to the introductory tasks. Their first 6 tasks are pinned to their task panel in the bottom right, in the order that they'll get them from Explorer Jack to Blood Pact. Note, since the tutorial's all taking place in the overworld, rather than a self-contained island or cellar, the player's full interface is available from the start. There's no steady introduction of buttons. I think back then the interface was simple enough that we could get away with that. Nowadays, not so much. The player doesn't need to speak to Explorer Jack, they could pin a different task and do that instead. The player could in fact ignore the tutorial and just go off and do their own thing, without needing to skip anything. We tried a similar approach for the Berthorpe paths, but in retrospect, the interface has become too complicated nowadays to throw at a new user at it all at once. It seems like we'll need to take a different approach. In the meantime, Tutorial Island gives us a halfway house. So the player talks to Explorer Jack, who introduces the task system. In later versions, such as these snippets from Regicidal's video in 2012, the player is also taught how to spacebar through chat. I think I might have got slightly out of order. Yes, that one. The later edition also switched over to introducing conversation first, and then onboarding the task system during that conversation. Explorer Jack's text is otherwise the same in 2011 and 2012, introducing that you can claim rewards from taskmasters, mostly cold hard cash. Any questions?
Nothing in particular, just answering Starlight TV, even though I know Nami Pan also said it in chat. But if you are watching on mobile and you are logged into your Twitch and all your accounts are linked, you will still get the LootScape. Another fun thing is this the Regicidal that is also Mod Lee, that where these snippets are from. Stu? Uh-oh. We've got Mod Frozen briefly. We'll get there. In the meantime, congrats to Signrax for getting himself a very fancy Zamarakian Zami Max keychain. It's pretty cool.
Oh yeah, congrats. Am I back?
Yes, you're back.
Okay. Yeah. So Regicidal very kindly did a video series in 2012 with Rookiecidal, starting at the beginning of the game, and at the time the beginning was Introductory Tasks. He had some nice high quality video, so I'll be using that for quite a lot of this presentation. Okay,
cool. It was just I like there's a nice insight fact. If you've seen this as well at some point, Regicidal, good to see you, my man, or good to know you're still around. I saw you still streaming, so that's pretty cool. Back to you, Stu.
Okay, so with the task to talk to Explorer Jack complete, in the 2012 version, the player is rewarded with 1 shiny gold coin, and their coin pouch illuminates to indicate the increment. Their next task is to pick up a pile of coins outside Explorer Jack's house, indicated by a flashing arrow on their game view and world map, and a breadcrumb trail leading to it. More free money. Who doesn't love free money? Since Unstable Foundations has been removed, the Overworld tutorial is needing to teach the player all the basics: controls, conversation, and picking up items. The player might interact with a world entity to open the door, if someone else hasn't opened it recently. Since all this is being taught in the Overworld, we have to factor in the interference of other players. The player picks up the coins, proving they've mastered world interaction, and understand that the core interaction is point and click. In 2011, on the left, the coin pouch wasn't yet a thing, so picking up coins doubles as a backpack tutorial. The player isn't instructed to open their backpack, however. The task-driven tutorial took quite a hands-off approach and brought the backpack to front, so you can see the coins you've picked up. This was sufficient at the time, since the interface was nice and simple. When the coin pouch was added, this step was no longer necessary, so in the 2012 example on the right, the player won't actually need to start engaging with their backpack until they equip weapons during the Blood Pact quest. That's an unfortunate consequence of embedded tutorials in a living game. Systems could change at any time, and the tutorials need to adapt around these changes while the tutorial is active. Players could be in any state in that flow and need to continue from where they are, even if you have to make drastic changes. Sometimes you can wind up with less than optimal flow just to keep the tutorial functional. But whether the coins go into the backpack or money pouch, either way, picking up the stack of 25 coins takes the player out of an enclosed room and gets them moving about. They've completed their task, so they're next instructed to run somewhere, to practice the movement mechanic. Our friend the giant pointy arrow is back, indicating the run energy button so they visually learn how to toggle run mode. Fortunately, the interface was simple enough back then, no interfaces buried inside other interfaces that may or may not be open. I must admit I long for simpler times. This is a two-step process though, and once the player is in run mode, the yellow arrow disappears without further feedback as to what to do next. Nowadays, we'd probably get feedback pressure to explicitly have a marker suggesting somewhere for them to run and display pressing the button and running as two distinct objectives. I prefer to credit the user with a modicum of intelligence, and that's an ongoing concern. Andrew intended RuneScape to be for smart, capable adults. He made the game that he wanted to play. Nowadays, the market is a lot more competitive, and we're under pressure to appeal to a broader, more casual audience, make things idiot-proof, increase the player base at any cost. You can try to smooth over the rough edges with hand-holdy tutorialization, but eventually the player is going to have to think for themselves, as most of the game wasn't designed for mass market appeal. The player moves somewhere in run mode to complete the task, and once again they get 1 coin to reward them for this action. Not unlike rewarding a laboratory rodent with a feeding pellet for performing the correct action. It's a little dehumanizing, but it works. And we don't have to throw oodles of cash at the player. Even the tiniest reward, a single coin, is meaningful to a new user with empty pockets. It's a shame the coin pouch has been moved inside the home menu on mobile, or we'd probably make more use of that positive feedback loop. As a reward, currency also keeps things nice and simple, as you don't have to worry about insufficient backpack space. Now we've reinforced the interaction controls introduced at the beginning, learning by doing, we have the player travel a greater distance to deal with a goblin. Every tutorial since Tutorial Island has had goblins as the first opponent you defeat so far. Poor goblins. It's not easy being green. Any questions?
I've got a couple. I wanted to clarify, you were talking about Andrew at some point, and then you were referring back to Andrew Gower, of course, which is one of our founders of Jagex. So for those who didn't know that was what we were referring to. Peep SC made a very good comment, in my opinion. Is what do you get if you combine Mod Poerkie and Mod Stu? Is you get Mod Pork Stew. Which is tasty. Not something yeah, exactly. It sounds quite tasty in all fairness, and I think we have a pretty tasty and very consumable fun stream as well. Making it full circle there. Boop, 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 boop. Then a question. So I think you briefly mentioned a bit about Unstable Foundations, or you were going over that. Were there any Easter eggs in Unstable Foundations or in any other tutorials that we know of? Was a question from Inspector.
Ooh, Easter eggs. I mean, in Unstable Foundations, I guess the most notable one that springs to mind is that there were a couple of journals that you could find that conveyed the backstory behind why Roderick had this dragon in his cellar and what happened with it. So kind of that was more like secondary narrative for those who wanted to look into that level of detail of the storyline. I guess one other one that springs to mind is on Ashdale, because it was found relatively recently. There was a Easter egg in Magda's dialogue where when she provided information about the gods and the geography and various information to players after the tutorial. And there was one option in her dialogue where it changes to an alternate line referring to her cat called Guthix when you're asking about Guthix. That's something that the designer for that project threw in there, and we voiced the line and everything. Generally speaking, we don't tend to do much in the way of Easter eggs. I mean, there's kind of enough to do for a tutorial as it is. I do a lot of puns where it comes to the achievement paths, though. I enjoy coming up with really cringy titles for the achievements.
Do we have funny examines in our tutorials? Out of curiosity.
Yeah. Again, it varies. Like for Ashdale, that was deliberately a very austere environment. That the intention was to cut out. The designer for that was very understanding of cognitive load. And there we go, scratch the bigger cards. He was very concerned about ensuring that there was a minimum amount of distraction. So his approach was to not make anything examinable, only make things that you had to interact with interactive for the purpose of advancing through the critical path. And I think that kind of went a little too extreme in the other direction. I think kind of having a living interactive world is a key thing that's part of the identity of RuneScape, and I think that's partly why a lot of people didn't like Ashdale. This impression that it was like this movie sets that you were traveling through rather than a living, breathing place. Trying to think of notable examines otherwise. Yeah, because I mean, like the paths were like embedded in the existing worlds. That's not really all that applicable because not creating a lot of new environments. Ashdale was, as say, austere. Tutorial art and rework was taking back the old assets and literally just reusing them. So I inherited the old examines, didn't add any new ones there.
I mean, I'm thinking about it. I'm trying to figure out what the examines are on for example, Tutorial Island. I would indeed argue that like the examines are an integral part of RuneScape. I think that's part of like the RuneScape humor. Like, I think our examines are almost always a joke or like a pun, or there is something funny about them. It's like if you want to have a laugh, just start examining items, which I think is really cool.
Yeah, that's something that I enjoyed doing. Like when Menopause happened, they asked me to just stay late one night and just throw as many exams as I could at things. So I just went kind of crazy. Like it was a lot of really dull items. It was like potted plants and chairs and things, but it went a little bit crazy. Doing a lot of humanization of the plants and talking about their hopes and dreams, just to try to get something down there. But I think people appreciated it.
I think it is really good. I mean, Space Viking just mentioned in chat that one of the chairs in Menopause has as an examine, no, you can't sit on it, Riot World 66.
Yep, that's one of mine.
Oh, that is one of yours? Okay, how funny that is. But yeah, I think it adds to the RuneScape adventure. I would kind of say that examines generally in that game are kind of a little bit like Easter eggs, given that they are somewhat hidden away. But I would... What is your opinion of having an Easter egg on its own in the tutorial? Because you kind of don't want a new player to discover an Easter egg like that, because that would mean that he could potentially lose track or get confused, right?
Yeah, I don't think it's really the ideal place to have them, because, well, I mean, someone going through it, for one thing, they're going to only play the tutorial once, so they may kind of regret, I always wanted to see this thing, and the only way I can do that is to create a new account. And then, yeah, potentially that Easter egg could just be confusing to a new user. He may not get the reference. It might be trying to reference something that's within, it's integral to what RuneScape is, or, I mean, that's a tricky thing with references in general. And like, if you're referencing something in popular culture, that if someone may not necessarily get the joke, a crucial thing when you're doing examines is to try to still manage to make these things funny, even if you don't necessarily get the reference. Ideally, have like layers to the humor where you include a reference, but also there's some kind of wordplay or something, so that there's multiple layers, so that you can still appreciate it if you don't know the pop culture reference.
Yeah. Then Mr. Negu is asking another question about, are there any non-combat quests coming anytime soon? Well, I can say Desperate Measures is coming out soon, even though it has a 75 combat requirement. If you've got
just
your
to clarify, by the way, that's
such, yeah, you go first.
That's not a hard requirement, by the way. That's so whenever we have combat, unless it's like a very explicit thing, like 75 attack specifically, it's more saying there's combat in this quest, and this is like the minimum recommended combat level to do it. So I mean, you could if you had better gear, or maybe if you were using like potions to buff yourself up, you might find that you can do that at lower levels, just basically indicating there's some combat in this, and here's like a healthy level to be at in order to do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was thinking of like if you just like quests and not so much combat, then you can of course use your the questing outfit, questing armor,
Good point.
which makes it easier and all that stuff as well to get through it. So I hope that answers your question a little bit. I think it's going to be fine. I think it's going to be a really good quest in that note. And then a message I have right now, which I found very wholesome, was a message from Alan2550, which says, "Love this real talk, rare to see nowadays, especially from developers." So you can put that one in your bag, Stu. You can be proud of that.
Yeah,
and with that, I suggest we continue again. If you've got questions,
Okay.
please put them down. And I would also like to see a couple more cool examines, and I'll shout out the best ones after this as well.
Yeah, let me just remind myself which page we're on. Yes, okay, cool. Right, so tasks can also be completed out of order. Here, our enterprising player has completed the task for moving via the minimap, for example, which isn't initially pinned. As the player rounds the corner of the Lumbridge General Store at this state, a cutscene ensues. The camera zooms in on a man being harassed by a goblin near Lumbridge's musician, and unfortunately, several nearby players are blocking the shot, demonstrating the drawback of Overworld tutorials and not instancing your cutscenes. The breadcrumb trail and foot arrow helps to guide the player the distance toward the cowering man to engage him in conversation. In accordance with tradition, our goblin representative is obsessed with shinies. And presumably the goblin is leveling their thieving skill because they seem keen to shake this poor man down for cash money. The player is then presented with their first critical path conversation choice. Meanwhile, a nearby player dispenses some indiscriminate justice upon their copy of the goblin. Our new player can choose violence or choose the diplomatic approach. Rookie Seidel chooses the art of conversation, which leads to asking what they're fighting over. The man presents the shocking twist that the shiny in question is a bronze sword, which he hoped to wield as a Lumbridge guard. The player crushes the man's dreams beneath their adventurous heel, then scolds the goblin as it appeals one last hopeful time for a shiny. Alternatively, the player could choose to attack the goblin, which hides the multi-NPC and spawns an attackable copy of the goblin. The player then dispatches the goblin in unarmed combat. Evolution of Combat made your unarmed damage very low, so nowadays we'd likely ensure the player has a weapon, or we'd still be here to this day punching a goblin repeatedly in the face with little to no effect. Surprisingly, every video I found chose the diplomatic option, which renews my faith in humanity, but means I have no violent footage to offer you here. So please enjoy this picture of a kitten and some soothing music. Any questions?
If I knew this in advance, Stu, I would have got the cat out again. But that's it. Is there like an actual RuneScape painting somewhere in game as well, or is it just made by a player?
Yeah, so that's from the pirate quests. Are you putting him on the spot now? The one before Clockwork Syringe, Great Brain Robbery. Yeah. Well, spoilers. When the surgeon is doing some horrible brain surgery, this is presented to help power you through that trauma. So you enjoy this picture of a kitten and some soothing music.
I mean,
and then,
it would work for me.
That was continued for the rest of the series. One of Mod Wilson's little tricks.
Okay. I love this little bit of insider knowledge there, which is pretty cool. Someone else commented on the stream comment that apparently it was quite dramatic when you could choose to go for a dialogue or fight, which is quite nice. Sentinel got himself 200 mil from a numberal chest, which is quite nice. Congrats on that. I was not that lucky, I'm afraid. So I would almost say damn you. Yeah, no, I wasn't very lucky. I've never had a 200 mil ever. Slightly disappointed about that. Sunka Isna asked, will there be any benefit of having the Anachronia base camp and its various buildings maxed out? To my knowledge, to what extent you have your Anachronia base camp doesn't influence the quest at all. You just need to do the base camp tutorial. Because that's kind of the first thing you do if you enter Anachronia. It's kind of in that direction, isn't it, Stu? That's why we asked you to do that.
Yeah, basically because you need to unlock that area.
Exactly. Cool, that was that question. Spaced Vikings shared his favourite examine as well, which is on the Fremennik Slayer dungeon entrance. If you click that for an examine, do you have a guess what the examine could be, Stu?
I'm not familiar with that one, actually. No, tell me.
I'm surprised that this is actually in our game. It is... whoa, it's a guinea pig! Oh no, hang on, it's a cave, which is completely random.
Yeah.
But I like it for that reason. It's pretty good. So we've got that one. And then a question from 2P and 1970. And this is... We'll get to it eventually as well. What's your opinion of Ashdale? Is it underused and underrated? It's in the player's opinion, it's a very beautiful landscape. And he goes there very often to alch or fletch arrows.
So my opinion of Ashdale has changed quite a bit over time. Initially, I was very much siding with the players that I didn't feel like it fit RuneScape, and that it seemed like a missed step to me. But I've gained a greater appreciation for it in more recent years. I think it does have a little bit of a struggle in that at the time it was trying to do the best we could with the graphical fidelity that we had, and consequently created its own environment kit that was kind of more Mediterranean in nature. So architecturally it doesn't wind up fitting with the rest of the game. I think ideally if that starting area was kind of more grounded and medieval in style, I think that would help be a better introduction. But I do like the general flow of the area. I've actually been pitching internally. Again, must emphasize, none of this is a statement of anything's coming out, but I'm keen on the idea of using Ashdale as a hub for new players, specifically focused on the free-to-play skills. Because despite doing a lot of decluttering in Berthorpe and Tavley, it does, I think, still struggle from there being a lot of members' content still in there, that it would be really problematic to remove the guilds that are there. The Heroes Guild, Warriors Guild. It gets used for quite a lot of content onboarding, and I think that the new player experience can kind of be fighting against that when it comes to cognitive load. There's always going to be new content that players are being urged to go and play, and then new players arriving there as well. They're getting that distracting advertising along with everything else. So I think something like Ashdale, where it's essentially is part of the game and you can freely go there and come back to it, but it is also a bit more self-contained. I think that might be a nice space to just focus on building a convenient free-to-play skills hub, and just focus on that kind of simpler experience before the player moves out into the rest of the game. Something that they could opt into. But for those who come in and there's just so much, there's all these different skills I can do. I'm overwhelmed by the complexity of the interface. Something that's a bit more of a controlled environment that we can maybe stage them through more gradually. So that's what I'm pushing for. I don't think I've really got much traction for it as yet, but I can kind of see the potential of Ashdale. At least I like the fact that nothing's been done with it, which suggests that it's kind of ground to be able to play around as it for a new player thing. That's just me. Okay.
Yeah. Ashdale is. I would say it's probably one of the nicer areas. I feel like it has a slightly different style than a lot of other areas in RuneScape as well.
Yeah, definitely.
There is still a quest there right now, isn't it? You can still do.
Yeah. So the Shadow of Ashdale quest, but that almost entirely takes place in the smuggler caves and underneath and in the sewers. There are a couple of stages where you rise into the surface. But also we could I think do that environment much better nowadays. At the time we actually duplicated the light Ashdale version. We did a dark version before we had like dynamic skyboxes and things. And actually, like the reflections of the water was we did that by taking the environment assets and then doing a duplicate of them that are inverted below the water line, so you can see the reflection in the water is literally duplicated assets. So it looked pretty good at the time, but I mean, we can actually do water reflections and things now, so we probably don't need to resort to that sort of thing. So yeah, I think we could work around that quest because it has such a limited amount of interaction. But yeah, currently that's pretty much the only thing that's left over.
Thanks for that insider just sneak peek on the development as well, which I think is pretty cool. The answer you gave shouldn't also answer Swordze's as questions like what role does Ashdale currently fit in RuneScape? So I'll take that one off the box. Del30 is interested in what is the filthiest examine or your favorite examine in game. Yeah, filthiest I think is a bit of a weird word, but I'm curious. I think there are a lot of innuendos or suggestive examines in a game for sure as well. But if otherwise, your favorite or one of the favorites that you've added?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, filthy ones, they tend to get edited out. I think sometimes we've tried to push the envelope, and well, particularly when we used to have a dedicated editor, he made sure we stayed on the straight and narrow, and ensured that we didn't push the boundaries too much. So I think generally we managed to keep it fairly clean.
I myself am
I'm sorry. Again, you put me on the spot, and again, unfortunately,
I
can't currently think of a good one.
That's all right.
Yeah.
I mean, my favorite examines are probably in Violet is Blue. I really love the Katy Perry references in Violet is Blue. The one where you've got on the bushes where it's like shake it off, shake it off. I think that is quite high on my list.
Isn't that a Taylor Swift?
Taylor Swift, sorry. I mean, I like the song. I don't know the artist. That's where my music knowledge usually ends. Then Kjornborn asked if there is a reference to you somewhere in game because he was under the impression there was one.
Yeah, a little bit embarrassing, but yeah, there are actually three. Yeah, this was something that kind of happened when I was on the Guardians team. Mod Joe kept inserting the team into our content as a memento. So, see, first of all, in Prifdinus, each of the developers on there had like an Easter egg, something that you could do that unlocked some quirky thing. And if I remember correctly, this was like 2014 or something, so I've forgotten the exact detail, but it's something like you wield a mud pie and eat a stew at the same time, or something like that. This chat head of Tokar Hawk basically says that this is a much easier thing to solve than last time, and as a reference to the Wandering Gull Easter egg I did before that time that was a lot more complicated. Then in Dimension of Disaster, there are these heads floating in jars in the New Varrock Castle, and each of them is a reference to people who worked on that update. And then what was the other one? My mind is going blank. Curses.
That's all right. I mean,
I'll come back to it. Let me take some water. I think that I'm starting to.
Yeah, take some water. I mean, you've got more references to you in game than I have. I certainly, I'm still trying to get my name one way or another into the game. That's my aim, kind of. There are a couple of questions about Stroop Waffles and JMUT letters after the stream. I am quite busy today, so today I don't think it's going to work. I'll see if we can do something next week, but I'm not fully sure about that either yet. But we'll do it sometime soon after a live stream again. So
yes, the third one was also in Prifdinus. I don't know why we did two in Prifdinus. I think it's because we did two batches. In the Impling Collector's house, each of the Implings was named after the developers and QA and artists who worked on Prifdinus. So Stewie was me.
Aww, that's kind of nice.
The Crystal Impling, the top one.
So And then there's one question. I think I can ask you this one because you're a quest expert, Stu. I don't have the answer to this question myself. Kutizel94 ask, "Hi, yes, I see all your messages still. Was there any backlash about naming the quest a Clockwork Syringe, or were there no issues with that whatsoever?"
That's a good question. To be honest, I was on Stellar Dawn at the time, so I am not familiar with any controversy.
Okay, I mean, I'm reading it right now, and I'm not seeing any controversy myself in it. But then again, I'm partially a foreigner, so there are sometimes jokes of things that I don't get, which is pretty cool. And then a quick question before we continue: if I'm the youngest mod at Jagex, I was when I joined, but I no longer am, sadly. So it's a sign that I'm also slowly getting old. But back to you, Stu, and let's continue. I think our cat bars have been filled up, so we are ready to continue again.
Good. So we now return you to the adventure in progress. So either a copy of the Scalded Goblin wanders off, or a copy of the Goblin is punched into submission, and the mapped Goblin is hidden from the player. Engaging the man in conversation indicates that an adventurer named Xenia in the graveyard to the south may be able to heal his mortal injury. The man is hidden, and an injured copy of the man is attached to the player as a follower. This brief escort mission gives the player something heroic to do en route to the Lumbridge graveyard. In this tutorial, we rely on the Blood Pact quest to do the real heavy lifting of introducing combat, inventory management, and equipping weaponry. Fortunately, this task is brief, because escort missions can be notoriously problematic. The injured man limps along at walk speed while you run, but like most followers, fortunately the NPC teleports to catch up with you if you run too far ahead. So you don't have to wait for him to catch up. At least there's no failure condition and nobody tries to kill the man en route to the cemetery. As you can see, each player also has their own copy of their follower. I'm not sure if the command was available at the time, but nowadays we're able to make an NPC in focus visible only to the active player, so that's how we'd solve this nowadays. The player hopefully manages to locate Xenia among all these other players and their followers, and asks her to heal the wounded man. 'Tis but a scratch, so Xenia's bedside manner leaves something to be desired. But she gives the man her last trout. He stuffs the food into his face and feels a lot better. I know that feeling. Incidentally, these animations to exchange items and eat are also visible when other players trigger these actions. On the one hand, it helps to find Xenia in the crowd, but on the other hand, it's a little immersion breaking. Nowadays, we also have a command that plays NPC animations only for the active player. So this sequence introduces the concept that you usually eat to regenerate health in RuneScape. It does so by having an NPC get injured and healed. This is different from the approach taken in earlier tutorials. I feel it would be ideal if the player was the one that was injured and healed. That way you can see the state when your life points are low and register the life point bar replenishing when you eat. The approach here does avoid the issue the player may have healed up before the sequence, which would probably only be solvable if, say, you were inflicted with some kind of incurable poison. Or Xenia had an exception where she shivved you, just in case, which seems a little unsporting, though I must admit quite satisfying. The approach of injuring the man does add some levity. You're hopefully mildly amused by the man's low pain tolerance, rather than the player being forced into a position of weakness. Any questions?
Well, there was a question from Leonard Islander, but that's already been resolved because he was struggling with his Twitch Umbral chest. But he's got them now, so that's pretty good. There was a question from IORS if there are any plans on adding dyed variants of the Trimmed Masterwork or the Spear. And as is, I would say it's very unlikely to do something like that. And that is, we technically could do it, but it is one of those things that are relatively difficult to develop, if I'm right, Stu, because it means we are making many more configs and all those kinds of things, am I right?
Yeah, basically we don't have any dynamic way to recolor things. If you want a different color version of an object, then we have to create another version of that object, which sounds simple enough in isolation. But when you're dealing with augmentable equipment where it can be in a broken state, it may or may not have the cogs on it, it have degraded versions. You've got with this one in particular, you've got the fact that it can be spiked or trimmed, or it's all these different combinations basically, though each of those combinations is a unique object. So if you're adding on a dyed version of those things, then that's multiplying the amount of objects even further. And then those things in turn are having to hook into all of these durability and recharge systems, and it kind of something that seems like it should be really simple winds up being this really complicated process with a whole lot of different configs to check and a whole lot of things that can go wrong. So yeah, and unfortunately, I don't think that's likely in this case, particularly with something that has already a massive number of combinations.
Thank you for that more tech explanation than what I could do, Stu. If there are questions in chat, put them down. Stu is here for all your quest and tutorial, mainly for the tutorial questions, I should say. He's also an expert on everything else in RuneScape, but preferably tutorial questions. And then aside from that, I say feel free to continue, Stu.
Okay, I think we're about the halfway mark, and we've got maybe 15 minutes left, so I'll try to power through Blood Pact.
Let's power through, indeed.
Okay, so regardless, the screen fades to and from black to mask the escort NPC being removed from you, although you can still see all the other players' followers, and we complete the task. So our next task is to complete our first quest, Blood Pact. Am I off? Let me just check I'm on the right slide here.
It's all right. Take your time. We'll figure that
out. Okay, no, we're fine. It seems like I had quite a lot to say on that slide. Yep. Okay. Or not, you can stop doing these tasks and go do your own thing if you wish. This is a great thing about having your tutorial in the Overworld. We can connect you directly to content like quests, instead of embedding the tutorial in the quest systems. Interestingly, although the player is guided to Xenia with the breadcrumb trail, they aren't instructed to speak to her to complete the quest. This is the first stage that the objective is unclear. This might be due to quests being multi-stage content, or it might have been a deliberate decision so that those who don't want to do quests, or specifically combat quests, aren't forced to do so. But it does create a gap in the flow where some might be inclined to take their first break. At this stage, the player is being introduced to several core interaction mechanics. But unless the player chose to beat up the goblin, they haven't gained any experience, done any skilling or infantry management. So this quest is quite integral to introducing the core concepts, especially combat. At this point, the player has completed 6 of 44 Lumbridge tasks, and after the quest, we'll get onto topics like leveling, mining, and woodcutting. So the player talks to Xenia, and we get some opening exposition for Blood Pact. Incidentally, in the 2011 version, Xenia refers to the player by name. This text was simplified in the 2012 version. However, the player still has an option to ask, "How did you know who I am?" So this doesn't make much sense. Xenia and the other signature heroes were updated with a more unique character model by 2012, so the chat heads differ in appearance quite a bit between these two versions. Then the Quest Accept screen pops up. I've included the 2011 and 2012 versions of Quest Accept, since this screen was updated to the new interface style with the silver trim. Those of you familiar with Blood Pact will also notice that one of the quest rewards is a sling. This was later updated to a charge bow, since ranged more often uses bows and crossbows. I think the intention at the time was to make it more apparent that this weapon didn't require ammunition. Incidentally, there's a little confusing UX here, since the breadcrumb trail of the task continues to point near Xenia until you've completed the quest, although your objective at this stage is to go down into the catacombs. Quests don't generally give you step-by-step instructions, so this is the point where the player has to start figuring things out for themselves. Though within the catacombs, there is a task for each step of the quest. At this point, the limitations in the interface start to become apparent, however, since the player can only view one panel at a time, so they can't look at their task instructions and interact with their backpack at the same time, for example. This issue endures to this day since the legacy interface continues to be a thing. I'll hustle through Blood Pact since most of you have probably played the quest and it hasn't changed much in the last decade. After the cutscene introducing the 3 cultists and their prisoner, for her hubris, Xenia takes a slingshot to the face. She gracefully offers to provide support while you take point. You and the ranger seemingly take turns punching each other in the face. It's super effective and Kale falls to his knees. There's no tutorialization of combat, just relying on the visual feedback of life points damage and earning experience and skills. Fortunately, combat was simple enough back then that we didn't have to worry about teaching abilities and adrenaline and so forth. As the multitudes of you who've already played Blood Pact probably recall, after defeating each of the 3 cultists, you have a cake or death option. You can straight up murder a dude or spare their life. Either way, you take their stuff. You also have the option to shake them down for backstory, or just move on if lore isn't your bag. The quest is in a self-contained area, and they have Xenia to provide guidance throughout, so the task system is underutilized here. Tasks exist for each of the steps, but their descriptions are deliberately vague, like find a way across the balcony, in keeping with the style of RuneScape's quests. Their hints have passive information available, and the tasks aren't forcibly activated. The player doesn't get breadcrumb guidance to the next step. The player isn't explicitly guided in picking up and equipping the items either. There's no interface guidance throughout this quest. The player gets pop-ups for these tasks as they complete them, and they don't get coins for completing these quest tasks. The next cultist attacks with magic over a balcony, so the player has to equip a ranged weapon to defeat her. Back then you had the option to choose your attack style, increasing your attack speed or accuracy or range, which also specified which combat XP you got from each attack, though none of that is explained at this stage. Then the player needs to operate a nearby winch so that they can reach her. Again, this isn't explicitly stated on the critical path. The player has to figure this out for themselves by exploring the austere room, or seek out assistance from Xenia or the task system if they wish. The player is allowed to continue their murderous rampage, and Xenia is surprisingly cool with it. Again, without explicit interface guidance, the player is expected to pick up and equip the staff. Before going downstairs, Xenia also instructs the player to set their autocast spell. Descending into the depths, the player works their magic upon the main antagonist. They once again have the option to spare or slay him, though in this case his death completes their dark ritual. This shatters the necromancer's tomb and allows access to the dungeon in the lower catacombs. The player unties the damsel in distress and returns to the surface. After thanks from Xenia and Eleanor, you complete the Blood Pact quest. I've included the 2011 and 2012 versions of the quest complete screen, just for fun. You get each of the cultist weapons, including any you didn't retrieve earlier, access to a low-level combat dungeon, and enough XP in combat skills to gain at least 1 level. Your interface gets very excited as you earn XP in at least 5 skills. You also complete the Blood Pact quest task, awarding you the princely sum of 16 coins. This seems like an ideal opportunity to introduce the skills panel, and maybe the skill guide. But oddly enough, an introduction to these interfaces doesn't happen in this tutorial. It takes a much more hands-off approach, focused on in-world objectives. I still have about a quarter of the script left. Any questions?
I'll go through them quickly as well. 16 gold, that's a lot of money nowadays. Jeez, you can buy a lot with that. That was a side note I wanted to make. There's just another question from IORS. Reintroducing Tutorial Island have a positive impact on player retention? The answer to that is simple yes, because that's also kind of why we brought it back as is, because it ended up performing better. And who wouldn't want more players sticking around in their game, right? So that's why it came back. Another question from you as well. Do we still currently have some kind of combat tutorial in game? Mods 2.
You really do like to punch me in the gut over this one because it has come up before. So currently the tutorials paths does introduce adrenaline and abilities, and basically it's a staged experience where it's gradually introducing you to killing trolls and works you up to killing a boss, and I think portrays those mechanics in a nice effective manner, but it is a way that's embedded in that new player path experience. So unfortunately that isn't currently repeatable. At the time that we did it, the Combat Academy was still in the game, and we're hoping that that would get updated to work with the most recent mechanics. So at the time we didn't make it repeatable. If I get the chance to, I would certainly like to make that repeatable, because currently that is the closest thing we have to a combat tutorial at present.
Just to repeat, I was not trying to hit you in the gutter or anything. It's more so that because my thing is I know we moved it away from, like, we have the Combat Academy stuff, and we moved that away. We did move that to Berthold, but I don't know if there's like a decent replacement thing. So I'm still kind of vague. So then I don't feel comfortable answering the question there myself.
Yeah, it was a case where Modserver, I know he spent weeks and weeks on the combat tutorial trying to adapt it to work on the mobile platform. But I mean, the trouble with those lessons is that they were built for the very first version of Evolution of Combat, when things were where you had to like manually press each of your basic abilities. There was no revolution. All those improvements that have been added since then that automate the process and makes it a lot simpler. So we've like retrofitted it several times to try to adapt to our combat system as we've evolved, but a lot of the things kind of that those lessons were built for at the time are kind of unnecessary now. It's a lot more just automated, and some of the mechanics that it covers, like getting information about your enemy's weaknesses from tooltips and from the targeting system. Tooltips are one of those things that doesn't really work too well on mobile, because you can't move your cursor over something in order to get a tooltip. So unfortunately it just couldn't be reconciled. It was really a case where we just really need to build a new repeatable set of lessons that suit our current tutorial. Yeah, so we tried, but ultimately we had to remove it for the time being until we can come back to that.
Thank you for that. Before we continue, there's just a quick comment I want to throw out there. Don't play drinking games with these live streams. Don't do excessive drinking. Just drink water and you'll be healthy. I mean, seeing things in chat such as soon as he adjusts his webcam, take a shot, that just doesn't sound good at all to me. But that's the only point I want to make. Please continue, Stu. I like the pace. I like the info. Keep it flowing.
Okay. So in 2011, the next task in the list is to cast the home teleport spell to the castle courtyard. A bit peculiar since the cemetery is close to Bob's axes, which also completes a milestone task to complete 10 tasks. In 2012, we automatically move on to our next task, to get a pickaxe and hatchet to do some non-combat skill training. 2012 footage was quite hard to come by after Blood Pact, so I'll shift to a 2011 video from here. The player opens up the shop interface, and again there's no pop-ups instructing you how to use this interface. The task hints provide a little textual guidance, but you're generally relied upon to figure it out for yourself, relying on the interfaces to be simple enough to use without explicitly telling you which buttons to press. The player gets a free hatchet and pickaxe, no toolbolt in 2011, and then we tutorialize our first gathering skill. We're off to the Lumbridge swamps to mine some copper and tin, which, to save the journey, I've done in a box art because mining was quite a swing and a miss back then. The next task is to get level 2 mining, which takes about 4 ore. With a gathering skill loop introduced, now we tutorialize an artisan skill, smithing. Incidentally, as we can see in this rewards tab, the 2011 approach was to earn coins by completing tasks. Instead of giving them to you automatically as task rewards, you needed to claim them from a taskmaster, such as Explorer Jack. There's also a task to equip a melee weapon. It's intended to equip the bronze dagger you smith, but since hatchets count as melee weapons, equipping the hatchet you bought from Bob is enough to complete that task. This example basically epitomizes the continuous flow of this tutorial. The top 6 tasks are pinned by default, so you can quickly pick between a selection. Or you can open the task list and view them all, and pick from nearly 50 objectives around Lumbridge that gradually introduce you to the mechanics of RuneScape by exploring the world and clicking things. Somewhat mundane, but there's a lot of player freedom, There's hints on hand if you get stuck, and you can always go off and do your own thing if you'd rather. There are some features that are restricted by the tutorial, such as chat filters, but you can toggle tutorial mode in this task window with the click of a button. At the Lumbridge Forge, we can smelt bronze bars easily enough, but to smith requires a hammer, which requires a trip to the Lumbridge General Store, and you only find out about that from a hint. And that completes a window shopping task to buy something from the General Store, which is quite a way further down in the task list. I don't personally have any nostalgic feelings about the tool belt. All this mucking about with being unable to use basic skills because you need to be carrying the right tool is something I'm glad to put behind us. We smith ourselves a dagger, and that completes the mining and smithing section. Our next task is to fish some crayfish. Thanks to learning the ropes, there are crayfish spots in Lumbridge. Incidentally, a side note I promised I'd mention, according to one of our historians on the wiki, learning the ropes was apparently removed the 29th of September 2008. So since we're right next to some trees, we may as well chop a tree for the following task, which indicates a bit of an issue with this tutorial. Because you can complete the tasks in any order, sometimes the order in which they are displayed can surprise you. Then again, there is a certain satisfaction in working out the optimal order that best suits you. And depending on where you are and which tasks you've completed, that order could differ drastically, which explains why 6 tasks are shown at a time to help give you that forewarning. Oh, but we also have a task to burn logs, so we're going to need a tinderbox, so good idea to grab one from the general store while we're here. At the time, it might have been a good idea to have tasks for obtaining these tools. On the other hand, there's no guarantee the player would bring the tools with them, and they'd take up precious slots in the backpack, which may make it difficult to complete other tasks. Again, hurrah for the tool belt. Since we have the tinderbox, we may as well light those logs right here too and complete the next task. And hope. Hey, speaking of woodcutting, here's that task to open the skill guide for a specific skill that I was looking for earlier. And that task's really easy to complete. I just had to click a couple of buttons. It earns me a small monetary reward, so let's do that. I should probably log out. Thinks our hypothetical new player. Ooh, but here's another task I could do, and that would be really quick to complete. I'll just do one more task, then I'll stop for tonight. Maybe. And that's the Lumbridge Tasks tutorial in the proverbial nutshell. Clicking things and discovering more and more things about RuneScape by completing more and more tasks. We're only about halfway through these introductory tasks, but I think you get the gist. And the 44 introductory tasks include the 24 Lumbridge beginner diary tasks interwoven at appropriate steps. So completing these tasks unlocks the Explorer's Ring and gets you hooked into doing even more tasks and exploring the adjacent areas of Draenor and Rock, thus helping with that long-term retention goal. And there are tasks for completing quests and engaging with activities, skilling, combat, minigames. So this approach eased you into the wondrous diversity RuneScape has to offer. The Lumbridge tasks gave something to do for those who feel a little overwhelmed and want direction, but not so much direction that it feels restrictive. I will acknowledge it's quite mundane. There's no overarching narrative, nothing particularly interesting happens. This tutorial was probably more dull to watch than usual, but there's an honest integrity to this, to just engaging with the core loops, expressing the freedom of RuneScape, seamlessly weaving you into the world of Gielinor, with the minimum of obstacles to ultimately being the hero you want to be. In May 2011, Unstable Foundations was completely removed, supplanted as the tutorial by the Lumbridge Introductory Tasks. For about 2 years, these Lumbridge tasks were RuneScape's tutorial, as well as the engagement platform for at least the first 4 hours of gameplay. And then, at the end of January 2012, the Troll Warzone burst onto the scene. Troll Warzone was originally intended as a tutorial of the new members' experience, to complement the free-to-play tutorial in Lumbridge. That plan changed quite significantly during development. But that is another story, and will be told next time. And we're hoping to get Mod Jack, the lead designer of Troll Warzone, to join us for our next episode, when we'll begin that epic tale of trolls and tribulation. Any questions?
Thank you for this too. I just, I was just enjoying the listen to this. Is it? Would you say that the Lumbridge tasks are like a little bit of a predecessor of the task system that we are now slowly rolling out a little bit?
Yeah, very much so. So, yeah, basically tasks and achievements are pretty much interchangeable. So, yeah, when we moved to a different achievement system, they gave us the facility to build tasks, achievements for the purpose of tutorialization. And then now we have this path system that allows us to list those. Because one kind of drawback to that window you saw earlier with all the tasks is that there's no way really to chain them together to really show a particular flow. You can kind of put the tasks next to each other and hope people might do them in that order. But you can't really break them down into like smaller flows of, okay, well, this is the thing focused on the progression of mining and smithing, and then doing a thing. So that the parts, I think, provide a way to do that sort of linking. But the advantage of that task window is that you can just go and do any of those random things all over the place. So they have their pros and cons.
Well, there is something RuneScape to that. There is something RuneScape to that, I feel like, where it's like you decide what you do in what order, whether you go for the efficient, no XP waste route, or whether you just take it slow and everything else. I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah, definitely the whole sandbox approach. Everything's available to you.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you as always for the tutorial. I did not have any very specific questions in the chat that I saw. There was one. Let me find it if I can still see it. Let me read it. Do you know who made the Zemorek NPC model by any chance? It's very oddly and specific.
I'm assuming you mean the updated version rather than
I think
the one
so.
we used to use on old computers and things.
Yeah, I imagine our updated one.
Gosh, that's actually.
If
I'm
you
not
don't,
sure.
that's fine too.
So it would have originally happened with the Battle of Lumbridge, because that's when they were graphically updated for the 6th Age. I think he then also had another improvement parcel afterwards to add more detail. It was the same with Saradomin as well. They got improved later on. I can't actually recall which artist. I mean, at the time, it was like we kind of like threw everyone we had at each project, and Battle of Lumbridge required a lot of assets. So, yeah, I couldn't honestly pick out who specifically.
Yeah, that's all right.
Did it.
Absolutely fine. He was just curious because it looks very similar to another character or something that player has seen, which is pretty cool. Is there any tutorial questions? Put them in chat now. Then I'll ask them to Stu after this informational bit. And otherwise, we're just going to have a great evening and all that stuff. I can use some sleep, as some of you probably figured out. I've had a long night, or a very short night, you could say. But regardless of that, Twitch Prime, make sure you get it. You can get 4 Umbral chests, which guarantee you a purple, which is pretty cool. So that's a nice little bonus for your account, generally speaking. Aside from that, of course, we've got the 4 key rings. I don't know if we're going to get the image up or not. Yes, we are. We're going to do it backwards this time. So make sure you pre-order your God Exposed limited edition pins. There they are on screen. Really cool looking. It's a collaboration between us, Angelscapes, and the Noob Show. If you remember the Noob Show from back in the day, you're a proper OG in my opinion, which is pretty cool. You can use exclamation mark merch to get more info as well. And we've got some pretty cool looking capes, Guthix, Saradomin, and Zemrek Max capes. And they're key rings, I should say. I don't know if there's a difference between a keyring and a keychain, but that's fine. They're also pretty cool. Make sure you get one of those if you want to. And then last but not least, you can already see the title of that quest at the bottom, but Desperate Measures, that really cool quest, is coming out on the 27th of July, so make sure you are prepared for it. Make sure you've got that 50 agility, 50 archaeology. We recommend 75 combat. By no means it is a hard requirement. Make sure you've done the Anachronia base camp tutorial and you have completed Desperate Times. And that's all that. I don't think I did see any clear pictures. Oh, there's one other thing that we should probably address is we don't know exactly or for sure whether it will be a tutorials next week. We might be doing a slightly different live stream, so stay tuned for that. But we will be back, Stu. We will come back with another tutorials for sure.
And is it safe to mention when the quiz will be?
I mean, yes. So there will also be another pub quiz. But my question is whether we do that the last live stream of each month or the very first, because it's going to be Thursday the 30th. So I don't know whether that's going to be a pub quiz. But Mod JD will of course be back for those. The beach, as you someone asking about, is coming on the 20th, so coming Monday. So that's going to be quite cool as well. You can get all your cosmetics from previous years there as well with Oddmans, so it's slightly less of a hassle, which is going to make that a lot easier. And as I mentioned earlier during the stream, I will not be going in game after this live stream, sadly, because I've got quite a bit of work to do still. So I'll have to pass on that today, I'm afraid. With that said, I think it's time to say goodbye, Stu, and I want to flip it upside down this time. So I would like you to start with your beautiful Stualized words, and then I'll follow you.
Alrighty, well, it has been a pleasure doing this with you. Tune in next time.
Look after yourselves and tot ziens.